Hi everybody, in the workshop this week, well, I've been making a Birch Ply and Wenge side table with tapered removable legs. That's coming up next. So welcome back to this extended version of the 10-minute workshop. It's a bit of a long one, this one, because it's been quite a project and it's been a long time coming. My daughter moved house over summer, and in the new place they needed a little side table to get at the end of a sofa. So I said, I'll make you one of those, darling. And fast forward about 4 months, and here we are, finally completed. I've wanted to do a birch ply end grain sort of project for a little while, ever since I did these sort of, remember these little coasters that I did a couple of years ago, and I wanted to incorporate that same sort of checkerboard pattern in there as well. I'd also picked up a little piece of wenge from the Hardwood Offcuts shop when I went there for the first time, and I brought all those together. But I also wanted the table to have removable legs because where my daughter is a rental, and they may need to move again, and just having the legs removable means it's easier for storage. So to bring all those elements together was a little bit complicated, but this is how I worked my way through it. I'm starting by gluing up the 12mm strips of birch ply that will make the checkerboard pattern either side of the wenge. And to begin with, I'm making these in 3 separate panels, clamping each one carefully to keep it as flat as possible. Then gluing the 3 panels together to make a full-size piece. While the glue dries, I can double check the MFT for square, set up a stop to make all the strips consistent, and then cut them all out. First the birch ply, and then the wenge, and then the 12mm checkerboard birch ply. Note that I cleaned up one edge with the track saw first. $18, $12, $18. I've worked out the sizes needed to make the table the correct dimensions, and I'm laying these out dry with the strips I've just cut to double check. Then I can quickly smooth out the decorative pattern with a hand plane and start gluing up the top. Adding a couple of pins to each layer just to make sure they don't get too swimmy under clamping. With the top complete, I'm using a hand plane to flatten things out a little. Then I can get busy with a sander, checking as I go that I haven't rounded over the edges. Alright, so story so far, looking pretty good. The top is pretty nice and flat and smooth, it's all glued up and is the right size critically, which means I can start work on the legs. I want the legs to be removable, so what I'm going to do is make them in a sort of an N section, so you've got a top and the legs that come off it, and then this top section can abut and join onto the tabletop with some kind of knockdown fixing. I have a plan for that. But what I need to do first, everything's made from laminated up ply, 2 18s and a 12, so it comes up about 48mm, so just within the maximum depth of cut on my track saw. And what I want to do is make a sort of bridle joint. So this is the top frame, and that's the center section of the leg, so that'll sort of sit within the 2 outers like that. But I can't, because I want to put a taper on the leg, I can't make this up yet, so I've got to make the top and the and the legs separate, and then make the tapers, make the cuts on the leg, and then I can glue the whole assembly together. The legs are shorter than this. I cut everything to the same length just to make life easier, and the legs are actually going to come down to about there. Yeah, thank you. So the legs are going to come to about there, and then I can just trim those down and get the tapers done. But to start with, I need to make sure that this is the right size. So now I've got that to the right length, I can make these top sections the right length. And I'll do this centre section in the old-fashioned way by taking 2 of the 12mm inner sections from the leg and putting it against it like that, and just using the timber that we have to measure it out. Anyway, that's what I'll do first. Get those cut to size, then I can get everything glued up and clamped. With the 3 sections of each leg assembly all dry and marked into sets, I can measure them to length and cut them to size in pairs, and then set about cutting the tapers. I'm using a stop on the bench to stop the leg from creeping forwards, and the other leg of the set to balance the rail, then cutting the tapers in one pass, making 2 cuts on each leg. I'm quickly making some glue blocks to help with the assembly. Can you guess what they're for? With all the joints glued up and clamped across, I want to clamp the leg along its length, but I've left the tenon of the bridle joint a little long to be trimmed back later, and the glue blocks just sit around this horn to let the clamps do their stuff. With the leg sets dry, I can make a full depth pass with the track saw, trimming off these horns and cleaning up the top edges of the leg sections. I'm using lamello Clamex fittings to attach the legs to the top, and I'm marking out the positions on tape. Then cutting the slots for the connectors, first in the top, and then in the legs. Then with the connectors tightened, I can flip the table upright and start the final sanding process. First with a random orbital, then the orbital, and finally with a small stroke finish sander at P240. I'm using Osmo Clear Pollux oil in a satin finish, applied with a stockinette cloth and rubbed well in. Sure does make that end grain pop, doesn't it? So that's it really for this week's little project. A bit of a long video, I'm sorry about that. But there was a lot to pack in. Overall, I'm quite pleased with how it's turned out. There's a few niggles sort of along the way, and if you're a Patreon supporter, and thank you if you are, there'll be some deleted scenes from this in this weekend's video because there are the odd cock-up. But we resolved those issues and it's worked out pretty well. I'm really pleased with the overall look. Love the way you get this sort of tiger stripe pattern coming through when you cut through birch ply at an angle like that. I wasn't sure about doing that, but I'm really glad I did. And overall, I think it's a really nice piece that's come together quite well. There's a few, as I say, a few challenges along the way. In terms of proportion, it's a bit sort of out of whack because it's designed to go into a very specific space. So height and width and depth were dictated by where that is. It's the nature of bespoke furniture. You know, it fits where it fits, and it's not really meant to work anywhere else. But overall, I think I'm very happy with the overall finish on it. And the fact that I have managed to incorporate removable legs means that it will be a bit more flexible, a bit easier to cart around in future if they need to. In terms of gear, it was all done on a track saw apart from the knockdown fittings from the lamello. So relatively, you know, within most people's scope, I think, just to cut up strips of birch ply and glue them together with a few clamps and plenty of glue and a few sanders as well. But that's it for this week's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, if you're stuck for sort of gift ideas at this seasonal time of year, then check out my Etsy store, but I've got a few bits and pieces out there. And I've also got a couple of gift ideas videos up on the channel, on this channel and on my second channel as well. So have a look at those if you're stuck for ideas. But otherwise, I think that's it for this week's video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.